Hey guys, welcome back into the Is AI Coming for Your Job podcast, the podcast where we discuss all things AI as it relates to work and life. I am your host, Jack Forrester. Before we get started, you can send your comments or questions to aiandyourjob@gmail.com. Let me know what you do for work and how susceptible you think your job is to being augmented or replaced by AI. Also, please subscribe and rate the show in whatever platform you're utilizing to listen. Let's get into some headlines. From the Wall Street Journal, quote, "What will AI do to your job?" Take a look at what's already happening to coders. From the article, quote, "AI seems set to do to computer programming and possibly other kinds of so-called knowledge work what automation has done to other jobs, from the factory floor and the warehouse to the checkout aisle and call center. In other words, software is eating the software industry." So we discussed this previously. There's been no shortage of words written or spoken on what impact AI will have on white-collar jobs. It seems computer programming is front and center for what can heavily be impacted by AI. All the talk in recent years about transitioning truck drivers who lost their jobs to self-driving trucks, or miners who lost their jobs due to the transition to renewable energies, being able to learn to code doesn't seem like a viable path forward. The heaviest layoffs we've seen over the past 6 months or so have come from the technology sector. Now, those technology companies haven't cited a transition due to AI for those layoffs, but it's hard to think that these tech companies won't implement AI programmers as a means to increase productivity while reducing overhead. I recently saw an interview with Ahmad Mostak, who's the founder and CEO of Stability AI. Stability AI is one of the companies behind Stable Diffusion. Stable Diffusion is an AI platform that generates images or pictures from text prompts. So you can type in whatever you want to see, and it will generate a picture. It's pretty amazing. Some of the images being created from Stable Diffusion are intriguing. I think there's a $10 monthly fee associated with using Stable Diffusion, but you can see Stable Diffusion created content all over the web if you perform a Google search. In any case, in that interview, Mostak made a bold claim that there wouldn't be any computer programmers within the next 5 years. That's, of course, the one extreme end of the spectrum. He did back it up by saying that over 40% of all code currently on GitHub is AI generated. So if you don't know what GitHub is, it's a code hosting platform. When you're working on a project, you can push your code to GitHub to have it stored, tracked, and you could use it to collaborate with others. In short, it's hugely important for programmers. In that interview, Mostak also noted that ChatGPT can pass the Google Level 3 programmer exam, and you can run it on something as simple as a MacBook or an iPhone. There has, of course, been pushback on those claims from Mostak, from other technologists, claiming the need for programmers isn't going anywhere. Programmers' jobs will certainly change, but the field is here to stay, at least for the next decade or so, according to the folks on the other end of the spectrum. Our second headline comes from The Atlantic. Quote, "AI-generated junk is flooding Etsy," end quote. This article does a great job outlining the gold rush currently being sold under the banner of AI. It covers the courses YouTube personalities are hawking that will allow you to utilize AI to create passive income streams with little to no effort. And some of these are certainly legitimate and incomes are being created, but there's such a deluge of information it's hard to know what is real and what's a money grab for content creators. This article helps distill that information down. Concerning Etsy specifically, from the article, quote, "It may come as a surprise that AI-generated products are so commonplace on Etsy, a platform that was designed nearly 2 decades ago specifically for artisans to make handmade items. But the site has been moving away from its history for years, and unrest among longtime sellers is basically the status quo. In 2019, sellers bristled when they were pushed to offer free shipping to compete with Amazon, and the CEO stated that handmade was no longer the value proposition of the site. Modern Etsy celebrates garbage or AI-generated products as long as it sells. The article goes on to say that the company's policy is that AI-generated digital products are permissible because some level of creativity is still involved. According to the writer of the article, Caitlin Tiffany, she searched for top listings in digital products within Etsy, and the results came back with things like passive income with ChatGPT, or 50,000 ultimate ChatGPT prompts, or 799 AI prompts for artists, or how to use ChatGPT and prompts to create ebooks automatically. There's certainly some trepidation among the legitimate or more old school Etsy creators as it relates to the site allowing AI generated products. They suspect that the proliferation of cheap AI art is pushing real artists down in the already highly competitive search results and ultimately off the site. So here's another profession, albeit a non-traditional one, in which workers are being significantly impacted, though in this case it seems cheap, artificially created works are doing the trick. Our third article comes from Forbes, quote, how real people are caught up in Reddit's AI porn explosion, end quote. From the article, quote, as text-to-image generators become easy to build, use, and customize, AI-generated porn communities are burgeoning on Reddit. But these synthetic sexual photos are built on non-consensual images of real people. If you don't know what Reddit is, it's essentially a huge discussion forum where you can find folks of all stripes to discuss any topic in the world. There are groups dedicated to most any topic that you enjoy or can think of. From the article, quote, Forbes found 14 subreddits dedicated to AI-generated porn, 10 of which have been created within the past 2 months. Each subreddit has thousands of members and thousands of visits each week. Within these subreddits, some users request or sell AI-generated sexual deepfakes of real people, end quote. We talked early on in this podcast about nefarious actors using seemingly benign photos of regular folks for porn creation. Well, here's the threat playing out in real time. Certainly tools and legislation will catch up, hopefully, with this technology, but who knows how long that will be. In the meantime, lives are going to be upended due to this technology. It's completely feasible that the photo of you on your vacation with your family that you posted online can be used to create deepfake porn videos, and there's little you can do about it. And if that's not frightening enough, what's to stop these folks from using photos of your kids to do the same thing? From the article, quote, as text-to-image AI tools become more sophisticated and their outputs more realistic, it's becoming difficult for users to differentiate not only between what's real and what's not, but also what is consensual and what is not, end quote. One victim of a sex trafficking case in which she and another woman were coerced into having sex on camera told Forbes that she believes the use of her images or videos for training AI systems would be a violation of her privacy. The victim, who spoke anonymously with Forbes out of concern that videos of her would resurface, says that sexually explicit videos of her were uploaded to Reddit and other sites without her consent and were later taken down. Quote, for people to still have copies of this is already a huge infringement on my legal rights, she says. So for them to be sharing these copies publicly and then creating new content with my image to distribute and train the AI systems, it basically means that I, as a person, have zero control or ability to stop it, end quote. This is, of course, the less ambiguous of the two kinds of AI-generated porn. Let's forget a minute about the detrimental effects of porn on the creator and the consumer. That is a problem, but taking someone's direct picture or direct likeness and generating salacious content without their approval is obviously a problem. The more ambiguous case or side of this is the AI generated content that was aggregated from millions of pictures, because some AI generated pictures, including porn, is created from thousands, if not millions, of photos from across the web. So it might not be your full face in the AI generated picture or video. It might only be a fraction of a percentage of your face in the video, if that makes sense. And is that okay? Are you okay with one of your family photos being used to create an AI generated porn video? I would guess most folks would not be okay with it. Our final headline is also from Forbes. Quote, "No pilot, no problem. Here's how soon self-flying planes will take off." End quote. From the article, quote, "The aircraft are already here. Pilot unions are preparing for battle, and the FAA is playing it cool. Autonomous flight is coming to civil aviation sooner than anyone thinks, and it may prove to be a surprising boon for flyover country." End quote. The article continues, quote, "The U.S. military has been flying autonomous planes for decades, of course, but always in segregated airspace. Now it's becoming increasingly clear that self-flying planes are coming to commercial aviation and not in some distant Jetsons-type future world. Aircraft manufacturers are working towards it, airlines are eager for it, and the FAA is preparing for it. And pilot unions acknowledge the threat is looming on the horizon." As with all things AI, it's difficult to tell when or how soon this transition will take place. The technology will have to operate beyond perfection in order for it to be authorized by the FAA. Much like driverless cars, while the technology is progressing, and there are actually driverless cars on the road today, government entities can't take any risk. But taken to its logical conclusion, the technology will be far superior in operating cars or airplanes than humans ever will be. Also, technology doesn't require a salary, benefits, and retirement plans. Technology also doesn't get sick and miss work. From the article, quote, 6 years ago, a report from the Swiss bank UBS estimated that autonomous planes could save the air transportation industry more than $35 billion a year. That's more than enough incentive to get airlines investing in the technology and to start winning over consumer trust for pilotless aircraft. From the article, self-flying commercial planes seemed like a distant idea a decade ago. Now insiders are speculating that small commercial planes could be carrying passengers by the end of this decade. There's an estimated 110,000 pilots working in commercial aviation in the U.S. You can bet that, like the truck driving unions, the pilot unions will be working overtime to stall the technology, but implementation is inevitable. As an aside, the subtitle to the article mentioned a boon for flyover country. The article mentions that rural communities will benefit more from this technology, as there will be next to no limit to the amount of small aircraft in the sky. Due to not needing pilots, commercial aircraft will be able to service small regional airports where they largely do not now. Okay, let's talk about AI investment, or more specifically, AI lobbying. Who's lobbying for AI and in what way, or how much money? Well, as you can imagine, specific on who's throwing money at AI is not great. Obviously, with the release of ChatGPT, tech companies have all thrown their weight and might behind AI research through additional funding. And according to some financial pundits, the massive push in AI stocks or investment has helped keep the pending recession at bay, at least for now. So it's obvious why the tech companies like OpenAI, Meta, Microsoft, Anthropology, and others are putting their weight behind lobbying in D.C. Favorable regulation will serve them well in the years ahead. I'll link to an article from Open Secrets and one from Politico. I think they both break down about as well as you can break down the companies or industry currently lobbying for AI in DC. But there are some companies or industries you might not expect, or at the very least, they're less obvious than the tech companies that are lobbying for AI in DC. From the Politico report, here's a short list of who's lobbying for AI regulation in Washington. America's Health Insurance Plans, which is a trade association for health insurance companies, National Venture Capital Association, the American Medical Association, GE Healthcare Technologies, Retail Industry Leaders Association, Discovery Communications, Zurich Insurance Group, State Farm Insurance, and several universities. I think it's obvious that healthcare is a major business, so it makes sense for these groups to be pushing for AI regulation in a way that's favorable to them. The same can be said for all of these groups mentioned. They all stand to benefit greatly from these technologies. In the case of healthcare, though, AI will be able to detect diseases faster and with more accuracy. It already is. One of the benevolent promises of AI is that it will lead to tremendous breakthroughs in healthcare. We should all be healthier as a result of AI. And what will that do for health insurance companies, which are also lobbying for AI research? In the short term, healthcare costs could be reduced due to early detection, but in the long term, if we move towards a health utopia, what will become of health insurance? And the same goes for car insurance. If driverless cars take over the road, and the consensus is that they will in the coming decades, what will become of car insurance companies? If self-driving technology is perfected and taken to its logical conclusion, there will be next to no accidents on the roads. Will there be a need for car insurance? I'm guessing insurance giants are already looking into these questions. In the meantime, AI research, which they're lobbying for, will help them better analyze data and trends, and AI will, of course, help them do it with less of a workforce. This is true across all of the groups eyeing favorable AI regulation. Tech, healthcare, investment firms, entertainment, higher education, and retail groups all recognize the massive potential for change in AI and the massive potential for their bottom line. So lastly this week, I wanted to highlight a talk that was given several months ago, I think back in March, by Tristan Harris of the Center for Humane Technology. Some of you may know Tristan Harris. He was previously an ethicist at Google and left Google to create the Center for Humane Technology, which sponsored the talk in question. Some of you may recognize Tristan Harris from the Netflix special called The Social Dilemma. If you haven't watched it, I would highly recommend it, as it underscores how humanity accepted and bought into, with little concern, social media, and how the dopamine hits from the likes and the comments on our Facebook posts or Instagram posts blinded us to the fact that we, humans, were becoming products for tech companies to be bought and sold to advertisers. There are obviously some benefits associated with social media. The ability to connect with family and friends around the world seems to be the obvious answer. There have also been cases of people in need of organ donors who have been able to find donors via social media that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So there are some obvious positive attributes to social media, but they pale in comparison when you think of the negative. Polarization, bots or deepfakes, fake news, doom scrolling, influencer culture, addiction, information overload, sexualization of kids, shortened attention spans, etc., all of which have had significant impacts on mental health. And these are all things that we still don't know what the long-term implications will be. In any case, if you haven't seen The Social Dilemma, please do so, especially if you have children. It will hopefully educate you as to how detrimental social media is for your kids. This latest talk is called The AI Dilemma. It's linked in the show notes, but you can find it relatively easily on YouTube. This may be one of the events that we look back on and realize was a milestone or a pivotal moment on our road to an AI world. While social media was sold as a connection tool or giving everyone a voice, it came at the cost of mental health and all of those things we just covered: polarization, information overload, sexualization of kids, etc., etc. The same will be true of AI. AI will be sold as an efficiency tool, medical innovator, scientific innovator, capital creator, etc., etc. But at what cost will it come? Some of these things covered in this talk are reality collapse, automated cyber weapons, biology automation, synthetic relationships, exponential blackmail, etc., etc. Any concerns with these things I just mentioned? Probably so. And there are more, and they cover all of these points in the talk. At the very least, if you're not concerned, you should probably pause to ask if this technology is being implemented thoughtfully and ethically. And the answer to that is probably how the other AI labs have responded to the release of ChatGPT, seemingly with reckless abandon. So probably not being implemented thoughtfully and ethically. What they don't discuss in this talk, and I think is important to note, is AGI, or artificial general intelligence. AGI is really the concern of most of the folks we've covered on this podcast: Max Tegmark, Eleazar Yudkowsky, Elon Musk. These guys are worried about AGI and humanity being eliminated altogether. This particular talk doesn't even concern itself with AGI, even though they recognize AGI as a concern. Their concern here are the lesser or more seemingly benign aspects of AI integration and how it will impact society. One point I want to highlight here is the discussion on Wi-Fi radio signals. Here's Tristan Harris.
So here's one other example. Another language you could think about is Wi-Fi radio signals. So in this room right now, there's a bunch of radio signals that are echoing about, and that's a kind of language that's being spit out, right? And there's also another language that we could put a camera in this room, and we could see that there's people. And there's some algorithms already for like looking at the people and the positions that they're in. So imagine you hook up to an AI, sort of just like you have two eyeballs, and you sort of do stereoscopic vision between the two eyeballs. You have one eyeball looking at the images of where everybody's at in this room, how many people are here, what posture are they in. And you have another eyeball plugged into the AI that's looking at the radio signals of the Wi-Fi. And they basically said, could we have it train a bunch looking at both and counting the number of people, the postures that they're in, and then we close the eyeball to the AI that's looking at the image. So now we just have the radio signals. And just having Wi-Fi radio signals, you can actually identify the positions and the number of the people that are in the room.
Right? So essentially, there is already deployed the hardware for cameras that can track living beings in complete darkness, also through walls, and it's already out in the world. In fact, it's everywhere that human beings go. But, you'd have to hack into those things in order to, get access and turn them all into like omnipresent surveillance. Oh, but actually English and computer code are just two different kinds of language. So this is a real example. GPT, find me a security vulnerability, then write code to exploit it. So here's what I put into GPT: describe any vulnerabilities you may find in the following code. I pasted in some code from an email server, and then write a Perl script to exploit them. And very quickly, it wrote me the working code to exploit that security vulnerability.
So if you had the code of the Wi-Fi router and you wanted to exploit it and then do that, you get the idea. These things can compound on each other.
This is the combinatorial compounding.
So I didn't have mass surveillance via Wi-Fi radio signals on my AI concerns bingo card. That's concerning. Another off-topic point here concerning mass surveillance is that while mass surveillance has always been a concern, at least here in the U.S., consumers are willfully placing the hardware needed for mass surveillance in their homes in the names of convenience. Ring doorbells and security systems, Alexa, Apple Home Assistants may all provide some level of convenience, but will definitely be vulnerable to hackers in the short term and mass surveillance in the long term. In any case, even without those conveniences, it seems Wi-Fi radio signals, which we all have in our homes, may do the trick for mass surveillance. An additional point discussed, and we've talked about it previously, is the ability to hold elections in the face of mass disinformation. So now AI will introduce another set of problems that we haven't even thought about when it comes to winning over voters.
So 2024 will be the last human election. And what we mean by that is not that it's just going to be an AI running as president in 2028, but that it'll really be, well, maybe, it'll be, humans as figureheads, but it'll be whoever has the greater compute power will win. And you could argue that we've sort of already had that starting in 2012, 2016. The campaigns are starting to use A/B testing to test their messages. But the difference now is that not just you're testing some different messages, but the AI is fundamentally writing messages, creating synthetic media, A/B testing it, AZ testing it across the entire population, creating bots that aren't just like bots posting on Twitter, but instead are building long-term relationships over the next 6 years to slowly persuade you in some direction. Loneliness becomes the largest national security threat. All of that is what we mean when we say 2024 will really be the last human election.
Imagine campaigns creating fake people or bots to be a companion to a potential voter over the course of several years, all with the goal to have that person vote a certain way in a presidential election. That's wild. You may think that it would take a ton of resources to pull something like that off, but it wouldn't. You could access those tools for free to pull that off right now. The problem will come when it's used as a part of a larger campaign strategy. This entire talk is just over an hour, and I've only covered about half of it here. I'm going to save the rest for the next show, but if you have the time, in the meantime, go ahead and YouTube and watch The AI Dilemma. So that's it for this week. I think next time we're going to look at higher education and how that's going to change, how it's already changing in the face of AI. But in the meantime, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. You can do it with just a few clicks in the app you're using at this very moment. If you want to be even more deliberate, you can share this episode via text or email to a friend or friends. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk next time.